Lagging today. Hi, everyone. So, welcome to the Being Healthy live stream. We are actually going to be speaking today about something that I think is critically important to being healthy, and that is the everyday things that we use that are non-toxic, that are or that are toxic. And so many people I've found out have absolutely no idea that they're non-toxic detergents, the non-toxic ways to actually wash your clothes, and they don't even realize that what they're using is toxic. That our bedding can be extremely toxic. That the clothes we wear can be toxic. The shampoos we use can be toxic. And so I'm trusting that people will really open up today to all the different ways in which we are actually poisoning ourselves and make the changes. So, why do I say this? Because we really are living in an age of tremendous non-toxic lifestyle choices now. First, there were no toxicity in our products, and then there was an overabundance of toxicity in it, and we're going back to now to non-toxic lifestyle choices for you and your family. So, if your goal is to reduce your body's burden from the potentially endocrine disrupting, not to mention carcinogenic or the irritating substances found in many, many common and even popular products, while promoting your personal health or your family's well being or even environmental sustainability, then you are at the live stream that you need to be. So, having said that, I'm going to welcome in Pete in the UK. What are the choices that you have there? Because I know that one of the choices I prefer here for laundry actually comes from the UK, and it's an egg. It's not a real egg, but it's shaped in the form of an egg. I don't know if you know about that one, but what are the choices? A lot of the stuff I use actually is not even from the United States. So, what are the choices you have there? What are the things you've noticed the difference between when you raise your eldest child and now you've got a baby and a toddler, and what are the differences you see and what changes have you made?
That's a lot of information. Yeah, I mean, all the things you mentioned, and hi, Dorrit, hi, Phil, are so true. And to be honest, very ignorant in my early days, if that's the right word, but just uneducated in terms of deodorants, washing up liquid, washing powders, conditioner, you know. Sometimes people doing conditioning twice with a conditioner to get a certain smell, but then when you realize it's heavily toxic, and also we're wearing it and it's going into our pores, uh, you know, majority of us know the saying: anything that goes on your skin, if you can't eat it, do not put it on your skin. As we know, though, many do in their, let's just say, whether naivety or just the patterns or what we've been conditioned to consume is a big percentage toxic. So what I notice is I've changed quite a lot in my journey from the, say, 39 years ago from my first child. Um, and I look back in retrospect, clueless, honestly clueless. And my journey is just, let's just say, advanced from there, or if that's the right word, but just got more kind of become more aware and took more notice. Main reason, health reasons, and then seeing other siblings in my family pass away, friends pass away, and then we normalizing, oh, he just died of cancer or just died of that. And it's just like, that just did not resonate for me. That was just as if it's just okay. No, no, no. So this is why, for instance, what we were talking about this topic now, there are so many toxins, comes out of the cars, the fumes. I mean, there's a radiation toxicity, 5G, internet phones. So we didn't have mobile phones back then. So I personally think that's such a massive one that we sort of underestimate, that isn't getting the concerns more widely known. So there's a massive difference. Me now, as I go along and learn from, my partners, long-term relationships, and my partners of the mothers of the child, I've learned from them, brought in some awareness myself. So recently, we have this olive oil soap, and to be honest, we melt that down a lot and use that for a lot of our washing. Aspire to just always have cotton, that's quite new for me. So people, don't beat yourself up, it's just like 2 years and I may still wear the odd non-cotton material. People go hemp. However, it can be expensive. Yeah, if that was the flow in my life, I would be more using hemp. However, there always can be a story with everything. So I've noticed a massive difference. People say, for instance, well, my gran or my grandfather lived to etc., but there was, I would say, 80% less toxicity back then. So, and then of course they can use that in the defense of eating flesh, and it's just like, again, there wasn't so much toxicity in the land, wasn't so acidic, wasn't being coming down from the above. So there's so many variables. It's kind of a whole minefield in relation to the toxicity. However, not to get too paranoid about it, and however, just to do our best and what we can. So my journey, I've mentioned before, was 18 years ago, wake up call, and then went on a journey of uncovering as much as I can. Could be contradictive right now is obviously try not to eat late and try not to be up late. So I ate a bit late and I'm up late. So that's another topic. But it's we eat too much for one. The conditioning that we've been taught, we eat too much. Milk in school back in the day when I had it. When I was at school, it would just be, you had to have your pint of milk. You just see so much kind of monopoly money making schemes, and pretty detrimental to us as children. Dentistry, dentist stuff. Why on earth would you put mercury in as an amalgamation in people's mouth? As a filling. So it goes on and on and on. So I didn't know about this stuff. Obviously, my mother didn't know about a lot of this stuff, even though she did her best. So then we become a bit like lambs to the slaughter. So it's not a great word to use, but apologies for that. So we do our best. I do my best to my awareness, what I bring in from my younger daughter now. And we do our best. So, everyone you could just learn from other people and do our best, and not to just, I'm not going to do that because there's toxicity everywhere. I'm not going to go organic because they're going to still be have toxins in them. But grow your own, do our best. So it's never too late. That's what I would say. And you may gain yourself a few more years, or find yourself bouncing around a bit more healthier and livelier once you stop putting really toxins, deodorants, hairspray, straightening your hair, what's going into your scalp. It just goes on and on and on. There's a list. Anyway, I will leave it there really. But yes, be very aware of when you have children, it makes you very much more aware, especially when they're coming up with rashes and things like that in retrospect in the past. Their body is much more sensitive and much more responsive to, let's just say, toxicity going in their body or on their body.
Yeah, you were talking about rashes, and what I found is that a lot of babies, they develop rashes from the nappies, and people do not realize that actually using a nappy on a child is actually one of the most toxic things we can do, because the material it's made
Yeah.
from is, and
We
they're
did have an experience. Can I jump in there? We did have an experience where we ran out of our more eco nappies, and we just didn't want to just buy these nappies. And we was away in St. Lucia at the time, so I got my shirts, and we'll say learning, remembering how to just use my shirt as a nappy. So we was using them for a while. We did buy some, and my daughter come up, I think 1 or 2 nights, she come up with a horrific rash all over her body. So that was an amazing experience. However, some people could say, "Well, I use them all the time, etc. My baby's fine." Um, the body is compromised, and the body shuts down on many levels, and I would say adapts. And the toxicity, potentially the body is placing it somewhere else, so it's not fine.
so there is a film, it's from Australia. I strongly suggest it to every would-be parent or a parent right now who had wee ones. And this actual film is called Nappy Free, and it's a movement in Australia that began quite a few years ago about letting children run free without nappies and teaching them to respect their bodily functions and signs and warnings. It is amazing the difference it made in these children's lives. And the study was done with neighbors whose children had nappies and then those who didn't. It was extraordinary how the actual personality of the child developed differently who were nappy free, and how much more secure in themselves they were, how much more confident they were, and they took care of their own evacuation needs. They knew when they needed to actually evacuate their bowels, they knew when they needed to actually empty their bladder, and they went to the place where they went to do it, prepared for it, little ones before they could even talk, because their parents taught them how to do that. So I think it's just laziness on our part in society and not connecting with the inner workings. And first of all, we don't even connect with the circadian rhythms of when children should want to be sleeping. We don't connect with seasons. We're not raising children seasonally. So is it any wonder that we're doing this? We're doing so much damage, in my opinion, to babies. Forget about children. Hopefully their immune system by then has strengthened enough, but the babies particularly, it's not just about the toxicity of the garment that's been put on them, but also the toxicity of thought and feeling that you have to cover up yourself because you don't have any control over your bodily functions. And when you take away that from a baby, it tells them that they're victims. Victimhood mentality started. It's a phenomenal film. I strongly urge everyone to watch it, whether you have a baby in your presence or not. And it's just called Nappy Free, and it's from Australia. But then we're going to go to Phil.
Hi. Yeah, I haven't had kids. I did, or should I say, I was very involved with my niece and nephew growing up, and I had quite a lot of. That would have been, my niece was born in 1995, actually, and when she was first born, I wasn't aware of all of this stuff, especially around children. It wasn't probably until 1997 that I actually then I read a book one day, like we do, right? Back in those days, we read books. Now you listen to a podcast or a show. Um, And in this book in particular, in England, there's an author called Patrick Holford, and he was talking about aluminium in deodorant, aluminium in products, aluminium in our pans, aluminium in cooking, in utensils, tin foil, which is actually aluminium. And I remember reading this stuff and going down to my dad saying, "Dad, they're trying to kill us." And of course, everyone thought I'd got mad. And being in construction, being a builder, like Pete being in car bodies, you know that aluminium is toxic. We have to wear gloves, and you shouldn't sand it, and you've got to be really careful when you're handling aluminium. So it's like, why did they put that in our cooking utensils, in our saucepans, in our food packaging, in the food containers, the aluminium foil that you wrap your food in to put it in the oven or on the fire or whatever you do with it, and to put it in your deodorant and your toothpaste, where it goes straight into your brain. And with toothpaste, it says on the tube, "Do not swallow. If swallowed, seek medical advice." I mean, that so for me in those days, being on my own with everyone else thinking I was mad, it was quite strange and quite a strong experience, which I then did my best to share with my niece and I say my niece and my nephew, they were too young, but my sister and her partner, just trying to share things about toilet paper, baby wipes, nappies. I shan't talk about the thing that we shan't talk about, that they get in childhood, and all the other things, and the foods, and on and on and on and on it goes. And it was quite shocking, and it was more shocking that everyone thought that I was mad and that I was nuts and I was a conspiracy theorist. And it's just like, but guys, it's all around you. It's in all of your products. You just got to wake up and learn a little bit about, not just what you're doing to yourselves, but what you're doing to your children.
So, Phil, I actually think that we need to be mad in order to be healthy. It really, because you're going against the mainstream and you're going against what's acceptable. And so there's a form of madness in that. And I actually have always been called a bit of a mad and whatnot, as long as I can remember. And I always saw it as a compliment. And I've never been insulted by it. So yes, I'm kind of crazy, and I love my craziness because it keeps me sane. My craziness keeps me sane. Yeah, I am very shocked about the stuff that we put on our bodies, and do we need deodorant? Do we really need deodorant? I haven't used deodorant I don't remember when, it's so long ago. But of course, my lifestyle is such that we're meant to sweat, and the sweat is meant to actually be sweet. It actually permeates the skin, and it tells us what's going on internally, in the internal organs and in the internal world. If it's smelly and foul, then that is indicative of a very smelly and foul body internally. And when you think about that something might be smelly and foul inside of you, why are you then using something to cover it up, which is even more toxic? So you're adding more toxicity to it. So this is a healthy organ. These are healthy organs. But most people's organs do not look like this. They're shriveled up, and they've got all sorts of pock marks on them and all sorts of stuff going on. And if your organs are functioning properly and healthy, you should be able to sweat and not smell at all. Whereas there are times when I'm walking around or enter a building and the stench is so overwhelming. I can smell cancer on people. Cancer is a very distinct smell. And I'm talking about even just this week, I was at the gym, and this young fellow, passed me by, and I went, "Oh my gosh, he has cancer." He's so young. Because it's so amazing to me that these, and it's not because of he's young that it should be a problem, but the fact that he has been peddled and given all this toxic stuff, obviously since he was a baby, is why he already has problems. And so it's very sad to me that most people are not even aware of any of this stuff. And then we end up giving them all of these inoculations, supposedly for the immune system, but nothing really to assist them with their own immune system, which means take away the toxicity and have them live according to the laws of nature. I think it's because we have so divorced ourselves from the laws of nature that all of a sudden we've developed all these supposed care products that are really not necessary if our internal life is healthy, for the body is healthy. So, which is why I wrote the book Being Healthy, because this book really is going to be launched soon. So that's why I'm talking about this today, because in the book I come up again, I talk about all of this stuff. Most people, when they hear being healthy, they think, oh, just food, or they think, oh, I need to be fit. Fitness is not healthy. You go into the gym and you can smell the stench in there, and some of these people look very fit. There, it's not the same. It doesn't equal health. Fitness does not equal health. However, if you're only focusing on the food and you're not focusing on the movement of the body, you're also not really healthy. So last week I was speaking about the fact that health is not a destination at all. It's a constant reevaluating of self, and it's constant because it's not static. Health is not static; it's dynamic. So we need to constantly be changing certain things in our environment, but mainly the internal environment. And we don't seem to respect the human body at all. So we seem to forget of what we're made internally, and all we want to do is stuff things down there and not figure out if anything is working properly when we stuff it down. And the body has so many ways in which it screams and yells and tells us this is just not working. You need to stop that. But we have been trained to ignore it. So both of you, Phil and Pete, you have some incredible stories to tell about oral health and the issues that you went through about dental health. So I'm going to start with Pete. And I've been wanting for the longest time for you both to speak about this, and I think this is the perfect opportunity today. Can you tell us about your struggles with oral health?
Yeah, I mean, there was stories my brother was telling me, or and my sister. So it's like, don't you remember, Pete? So I must have been 4, and the story went, well, Mum took us all down to the dentist, so I'm presuming all of us maybe, and Mum, and there I was, might have lost just for a bit, crying all the way there. No wonder I didn't remember. And, and I think I remember having gas up to a point, up to the age of about 14. And so, whatever, that's when it started. Not to discredit that I did have a sweet tooth there at that time. I would say left to our own devices quite a bit in our potential traumatized state. Anything to get us out of our bodies, sugar, butter, bread, sugar sandwiches. I mean, what a bomb that is. We talk about, you share a lovely picture of the organs. It's like putting a nuclear bomb in there, and it's like, what are your organs supposed to do with that? What can they do with that? Hence why we, have these labels, which generally coming from, a big gathering of mucus, the body trying to dump all this stuff to where it can the best possible way. So yeah, so that's when it started really. And but how ridiculous in terms of if I remember rightly, it's the second most deadly poison as opposed to plutonium, mercury. And there was a story where then they put mercury in these bulbs, light bulbs. And there was a story where a light bulb had broken in a school. So they evacuated the whole school until it was properly disposed of. So, and here we are. I mean, I'm sure many of us have had stories where they're broken or we're playing with these silvery mercury substances. So they put it in our mouth. Oh my gosh, and then you have the teeth connected to your organs. So I remember going back when I was doing the festivals, and I still had about 14 in my mouth. 5 years in the festivals, and someone who knew quite a bit, I'd show him this. It's like, oh my gosh, literally, he was freaked out. How are you functioning? And I did read quite a lot of testimonials when people just have two, 2 or 3. This is it's biological dentists. I would read lots of data on it, and after them having them taken out, miraculous transformations from a certain illness they had where they couldn't hardly walk, and especially root canals in terms of, again, connecting to our organs, and especially if you tap into the tooth that's connected to the heart, or shoulder aches and pains, so much comes from the meridians connected to our teeth. So my story started then. And even though when I think I was only 4, and that would have been my baby teeth anyway, so I'm like not sure of the whole equation there. And then I think I was a bit kind of again uneducated, didn't have anyone around me. That was just the norm. We normalized so many strange things, I mean, if we are so-called the black sheep of the family, I'm going to use that in such a high regard. I'm happy to be the black sheep of the family, or mad or strange, the nomad. I'd rather be the nomad, so to speak, than the yes man. When I look around, most of us are just running these programs, these belief systems, and believe it's true and keep feeding it, supporting it. So it's just like a massive big spell. So that's when my journey started with the teeth. And then by the time I was 17, I realized I didn't realize till later, and then I had 2 gold put in my mouth, thinking, oh yeah, I've got some gold in there. Years down the line, I realized it's just caps over mercury. And then I got to hear the polarity of gold and silver is just a no-no in terms of just a friction going on all the time. And I had really experienced this before that. Just to add in, around 15, I think I had my appendix out. So in a certain meditation, I realized that saved my life. So all the mercury and the drilling and the teeth work, so demolition, I'm going to call it, that I had up to that time, all the exposure to mercury would have gone into my body. So my body had to do something with it. And I generally used to have about 5 days a year where I would just be taken out. So I realized that was a kind of dry fasting without even knowing. My body just took me into that. So if I had waited longer this time, they said it could have, it was about to burst, and poison would have gone into my bloodstream, and I could have potentially died. So, thank you, appendix, So by the time I was 17, 18, I had 18 in my mouth, and I had them in for another about 20 odd years of my life. A few broke and came out. So, and then I was in a heavy metal car trade, filler dust, paint fumes, all carcinogenic. Wasn't careful, pretty careless. I look back in retrospect, my life then, even though it could look okay, so much inner turmoil, so much inner hatred still going on without even knowing that I was in that. So, yeah, hence I would have, took much more precaution or changed my jobs. So when I came out from the car trade, so to speak, car restoration, even though would still go on and do a few bits, I could not string a sentence together. 17, 18 years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, I could not string a sentence together, So due to them heavy metal toxicity, and I wasn't eating very well as well. So there was just, I was just, no wonder I had a wake up call. So higher self, what do we want to call it? My higher self. It's like showing me that I would be gone in a few months if I didn't change my change, wake up, and take notice and learn what I've learned over the many years, and keep learning and keep introducing into my everyday life. I say to people, it's like, look, that's the reason why I do what I do. If I hadn't had that wake up call, I would just have carried on in the same way. So this is where the gratitude comes in for every so-called, we could say, bad experience. But this is where it truly does. I look back, oh, if that didn't happen, this wouldn't happen, this wouldn't happen. So I share with people, you never lose anything of any value, any worth that is not serving your higher purpose. So the easier we can let go, let it go, let it go. And even when I might be in something, I just remember all these times where it's only got better and better and better if we go into duality. But actually, I come more home, more home, more home, more connected, more connected. So that's part of my teeth journey anyway, But now, so been quite compromised over many years.
And how did you actually use something different? How did you come to this decision that you must take it out? And when you did, what did the dentist do? Did they replace it with something else? And if so, with what?
Yes, this dentist had certain machines that he would find what is compatible for you. However, that could be compatible for you in that moment. But so he would use a composite that was compatible to the individual, which was really interesting. And first I had temporaries in, and I think I had some stories going on in my life. So this was maybe 14 years ago. And so I never really got around to have all of them completed. And then he passed away.
Just a second, please, Pete. You said that they found what was compatible to you. How did the dentist find what was compatible to you?
I've forgotten the actual name of the machine. Phil is more up on that than I. But you would put it on a machine in terms of, let's just say, in terms of allergies, what you might be allergic to. So within the compounds, maybe the many compounds they can use, they maybe have found some people have adverse reactions. So let's just say there could be 10, 15 compounds, and then they find which compounds they're going to use it, which is compatible for the individual. However, though, I've come to the stage to I got quite fed up, and I live now with, some of, especially the composite falling out, and it's quite interesting. And whether I trust that new ones are going to come up, but I'm going to leave it down to more fate. I have to maintain and be more careful. And, I have organic oil with me and all sorts of things that hydrogen peroxide, I regularly mouthwash and clean. But again, if it's generally, if I've gone over the sweet, i.e., especially the dates, if I might have any stories going on in my mouth, and or some other toxicities gone into my bloodstream. Hence you talk about sweat the other on your session, and hence saunas, many saunas, ice baths, to really keep purging. And I used to question, why am I doing this every day? I try to just get the mind out of the way, and it's just like, well, because you just feel amazing each time after, and for me, that was one of many ways of keeping a certain connection that I was aware of, that I had up to the age of 16, and rekindled that. And so I've learned tools. That's how I lost it. So I'm not going to do that again. So I've learned many things of cultivating a certain rekindled connection that I had. Would have never known if I didn't have the gift of a so-called traumatic experience.
So are you saying that the saunas and the ice baths help you to detoxify from all of that incredible amount? I mean, every time you speak about it, it's not the first time I've heard it, but I still find it to be shocking the amount of mercury you had in your
Mhm.
teeth. Because if you have it in your teeth, it's not just in your organs, but also the nervous system, because the nerves are right there and they're drilling
Mm.
into the nerves to insert this. So
It's
tell us
horrific. So it's probably bedded in the core of my bones, So, in different sort of awoken spaces, I sort of say guided, hence the extreme. It could look extreme. The saunas and the ice baths, and with this other practice, Jinshin, and the foods and the detoxing and water fast, juice fast, and gallbladder liver cleanses and dry fast. And so it's not fanatical. I think I'm aware that everyone in the so-called normal way of thinking are in a fanatical, drastic kind of state. My old me was in a very drastic state, and friends who would just accept, oh, he's got cancer, or he's got this, he's got that, and just passing away. Well, we don't have to sit down and accept all this nonsense. There's so many things out there. It has gone a bit astray these days, and there is misinformation, but really the basic core essence of, if you can't eat it, don't put it on your skin. Don't be around it, and look at what you're eating, and get the best, healthiest things you can. Again, there's misinformation, but, just clear out a little bit and you get more sense, and you might drift at times, but your body tells you, and then you can think, oh, you guys are all sensitive to everything. Well, because most things you're putting in your mouth are poisons. So great, my body's sensitive to that because I don't want poison in my mouth. If especially being a father and seeing what I've done in the past, and what we do now is just like we dumb down our senses. We've been dumbed down. So, to get back there, it's such a journey we have to go on, in terms of revisiting, you know, as Dory rightly said about just the abuse, even just having nappies. By the way, it's only in the evening we put the nappy on the baby, and each relationship of my boys, my daughter, and my daughter now, we always attempted to do the nappy, proper pure nappy, and no nappies when we could. But society and the pressures in life really put so much strain on you that you need a community. You need to be in the right environment to really do that. There was someone I knew, she said 6 of them, and none of them had nappies. I'm like, wow, amazing. And they lived more as a traveler, nomad. So, and had integrated that life. So, we did our best. It's beautiful. Our daughters, just, it came out naturally from the nappies to it may be just before 2, and, just in the evening, we occasionally put one. But not just talk about nappies, but there's so much going on in terms of the toxicity. Don't want to make a massive thing of it, but this is why things don't shift, and this is why things never change, because it's the very, very thing we're doing every day. That's a ritual we're doing. We've been spoon-fed taught. Why we can't really truly come back to life and be in our more vibrant self. Not saying we don't have sort of low down days, but nothing like before. And me now, it's just a mindset. So the low days is just a mindset. It's a mind game. You know, um, there's a war on our minds.
So I'd like to bring Phil in here now because I also would like to hear his own journey with all those dental problems and his oral health issues.
Well, it's similar to Pete's. Apart from I never had gas. I never had gas. We had injections, but for me, the same. Lots of fillings as a kid, as a child growing up. And of course, we had lots of sugar and sugar in our tea and sugar in our cakes and our puddings and sugar. So yeah, I had lots of fillings, and I learned where was I? I was in Australia, I think, and I read an article by a guy. His name's just slipped out of my mind. Weston A. Price. He did a study where he extracted teeth that had been root canaled, were extracted out of people that had passed away, and they were put underneath the skin of rabbits. And I know it's not a very nice idea, but this is just an interesting thing they did. And the rabbit got exactly the same disease that the human had died from, just from putting the tooth underneath the rabbit's skin. So back to me, yeah, lots of dental issues, lots and lots, to the point where, and I didn't realise at the time about the symptoms of mercury poisoning. And I went to the dentist in Harley Street. He was quite an amazing man, actually. And I was sent by a friend of mine because I met him, and I went for a consultation with him. And my friend said, "Man, you've got to get your mercuries out. You've got to get your fillings out." And I was like, "I know. I've been looking for someone to do it for the last, I think it was 5 or 6 years then. But I don't like the way that they do it, because it just doesn't seem right." So he sent me off to this dentist, which is the same dentist that Pete then had after I introduced him to him. And I've lost my thread. Sorry, guys. Sorry, another thought just jumped in there. So I'll go back to that. So yeah, he did a very, very specific protocol that I don't know any other dentist, definitely not in the UK, that does the protocol that he did, that was so absolutely thorough. And I don't know if he shared with Pete the protocol or not, because I didn't know until one day. And what he actually did, this protocol, was because he was a dental surgeon and not just a dentist, he would put a catheter in your arm and then inject you so you went to sleep. So you went under a general anaesthetic. And then what him and his nurse shared with me when I went back to one of my other appointments is they then put oxygen up your nose, tubes of oxygen up your nose, and then they stuff your nostrils with gold material. And then in your mouth, they actually close your throat off with a gold pad. And then they put gold pads in your ears to completely seal your ears. And then they put a whole gold shield over top of your face, so there's just your mouth open. So I mean, it's quite phenomenal. And then what he did, bless him, was he would take every single filling out of your mouth, whether it was gold white as in plastic, or the amalgam mercury fillings. He'd take every single filling out of your mouth. Then he would detox your teeth. Then he would put temporary fillings in, and he'd send you away on a detox protocol. And normally he would expect it to take 6 weeks. Mine took about, 6 years or something to detox, and I still wasn't detoxed. But what happened to me was, he took all of my fillings out, put my temporary fillings in, and the very next morning I woke up. I was no longer suicidal. I was no longer depressed. And I was no longer walking through treacle and dragging my dead corpse of a body around with me. The very next day, not 6 months or 6 years, the very next day, the mercury poisoning symptoms were lifted. I still think even now, after, what was that, nearly 20 years, I've still got some metals to come out. I can tell from the way my brain does or doesn't function. So there's still a way to go to get that metal out. And so the thought that popped in just now was when I was in Australia in 2004, I think it was, I had terrible toothache. It was horrific. And I went to a dentist and they did half the job of doing a root canal. I didn't understand about root canals then. And so then I went to another dentist afterwards because it just didn't work. And I sat in the dentist chair, rocked back. I opened my mouth and he laughed. And I said, "What are you laughing for?" He said, "You're English, right?" And I said, "Yeah." "How can you tell?" He said, "Because you've opened your mouth and I've just looked in. They used to have a field day with your teeth." And he said, "I know every English person who comes into my practice, I know when they open their mouths, they're English because of the state of their teeth and the size of the fillings, because our dentists got paid by the amount of mercury they could put in your mouth. So it didn't matter if you had a pinhole or a big hole. By the time you left the dentist, you had a big hole in your tooth." So that was quite shocking. And I think it was on that trip that I learned about root canals and how devastating they are to your health and your body. So when Hessian was doing my dental work, after he'd done my initial detox, I got him to remove that root canal tooth, which was a real shame, but I just did not want a root canal tooth, which is basically a dead tooth. They drilled all the nerves out, they filled it all up with God knows what, and then they've capped it all off. Looks great, keeps your teeth, but it rots your brain. So for me and Pete, that's the story, right? And I'm sure there's lots of other English people and lots of other people around the world that have to deal with that. So shocking, enlightening. My health was very, very compromised just by my fillings. So now I found another dentist and she's lovely, and she also does composite fillings and she tests the fillings. So that reminds me of Pete's, when Pete was talking about the machine. So it was a biomeridian feedback machine. So he could, so you could hold the different test files of different things, and then the machine would show how your body reacted to those substances. And then the dentist was able then to mix a concoction that fits our bodies. And yes, people that are affected by the mercury, some people kind of get away with it, and some of us, like Pete and I, we just didn't. We were too sensitive. Thank God we were sensitive. Thank God we were pointed in the right direction, that we could find the information and actually find each other and support each other through that. And we've done a lot of encouraging, Pete and I, with each other over the years, challenged each other, pushed each other, in an encouraging way to take the next step, to invest, or be courageous to do that next step that we need to do. This that's hopefully going to make a difference on our lives.
So it's interesting what you're saying, Phil, because I have always been of the thought and the feeling that most mental illnesses, and especially suicide, has to do with mercury in the teeth or very inferior lack of dental care. And it goes way back to when we were babies. And instead of being breastfed, which has everything that we need in it, mothers were suddenly taken off of that and told that you should not be doing that, and they were fed all these artificial things instead, so the teeth and the mouth didn't have a chance to develop. I studied developmental movement as a movement therapist, and in developmental movement, one of the first things we're taught, because of course developmental movement goes back to the time in utero. And one of the things that we were taught is if the child is not breastfed, then it will affect the entire oral health for the rest of their lives. And the jaws, a lot of people have TMJ, transmandibular joint issues, or neck pains, if you have chronic neck pains. They were not, almost everyone who has that on a regular basis, they were, just ask them and you'll see, I ask, were you breastfed? They will say no. And I did do that. Every time somebody came to me with those problems, I did ask, were you breastfed? And they go, why are you asking me that? Or how did you know that? Because it goes back to that. So many problems start in the mouth. And the sugar in breast milk is exactly the glucose that the body needs. Exactly. However, when you take the milk from another animal and then you pasteurize and process it, it's completely different, and it will wreak havoc on either the growing of the teeth or just the entire root system in the mouth. And I think it's criminal that this is still going on. I think people who've waited to have a child, I'm just shocked that they do not take the time to discover any of these things and to see, now, how do I raise this child in a way that preserves its integrity? So I know that people's talking about the fact that you really need the community because you really stand out. If not, and you do all these things by yourself, and how do you learn all of these things by yourself? But that's why we have this live stream. This is exactly, nowadays you can't. And he was saying that, those were the days before podcasts and before you could, the internet, where you could have all these solutions or these warnings. But people are still acting as if this doesn't exist for them. They're still acting the same, and it's readily available for so many people, and they still are ignorant of it, or you're just crazy. There's nothing wrong with going to the dentist and having a root canal. In fact, it's necessary. So I don't see animals doing that. I don't see them poking their paws down the other animals' throat and trying to extract teeth, and being told that you have to, they're going to extract your wisdom teeth. You have to have it extracted. Why? Why do you think you have those? Well, they're not necessary. You don't need them. You think the body, nature itself, does things that are unnecessary? No, we do. We humans do that. So it's very interesting that in certain communities, especially the living foods community, I see a lot of people who eventually come to me for assistance that say to me, well, I came because I heard I have dental problems, and I heard that you're excellent with that. And then I said, no, I'm not excellent with it. I just am aware of it. I am aware of the huge havoc it causes in people's lives. And I think people need to start taking their power back. And that's what I teach people, is how to take their power back and to find out what works for them. And there's a dentist also in Australia who is a biological dentist. And he only uses things that are compatible with the biology. And I've sent people to him as well and said, okay, but he's in Australia right now. I'm in the United States. How do I see him? I said, if you really want this, you contact him. It's not, we put up so many limitations in our lives. Well, I can't do this right now because da 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 da. And it's interesting because I see people in this country paying $300 and $500 to go to a game where grown men are running after a ball and beating up each other to get that ball. But to use $500 to see a biological dentist, it's too much. So our health is not important. That's what it tells me. Distraction is more important. Being entertained is more important. But what if we looked at our health then as entertainment? What if we start taking care of our health as the main entertainment in our lives? All we have to do is change and shift our perspective if entertainment is what we're looking for. So that is why I really put together this podcast and the book, because I think it's really important for people to start looking at what is this whole thing about mental illness. It's not mental, it's physical. It affects our brain. And it affects our brain cells, because everything we do affects our cells. When I see clients, I work with them on a cellular level. I never work with symptoms. because that's how we get into trouble all the time. Is constantly thinking symptoms, how do I get rid of this, what do I do for this, what do I take for this, rather than how do I change myself, how do I transform myself so that my body, my feelings, my thoughts will therefore be transformed. And so I think what we need to start doing is looking at toxicity as every thought we think, every feeling we have that doesn't serve the purpose of a cell, every cell in our body, to work at full capacity. Any temptations we have to go and drink alcohol tonight because everybody else is going and, oh, I want to have some fun. How can killing or destroying the liver be fun? It's a thought process. It's changing our thoughts. And that's why the first thing I do with clients is to change their languaging. I re-language them so that they start seeing themselves differently and behaving differently towards themselves. And I think we have so much to learn, so much to do, and so much to give of ourselves to others when we take care of ourselves and we start changing the way we see ourselves and the way we take care of ourselves. So for that reason, I'm really glad that you both joined me here today, because it's so important to know that the only thing that really matters in our lives is our health. Is the only thing we've been asked to take care of, our health, and it's the first thing we destroy. And I find that to be really, really telling. So for people who are tuning in today to watch this, we are here every Friday at this time, 12 o'clock Los Angeles time, which is 8 o'clock in the UK. Wherever you are, just look at the time, Los Angeles time at this time, and please subscribe, because we do a lot of this and we want to, and please share this, because there's so many people suffering from horrendous toothaches right now, from horrible, horrible illnesses and diseases, and it never occurred to them that they have the solution internally. They themselves have the power to heal themselves. Every pain, every ache, every heartbreak is a symptom of us not taking time for ourselves, of us not finding ourselves important enough to spend the time and the money to take care of ourselves, because we have not invested in ourselves. We'll invest in land, we'll invest in crypto coins, we'll invest in all sorts of strange things, but not in ourselves. So I urge you all today, when you hear the words health, start asking yourself deep down, what does that really, really mean? This is the reason for this live stream, and also for the book Being Healthy, and for my courses in Being Healthy, because I want to leave behind only one thing in life, and it's for people to start questioning what health is and why it's important. That the only tool we've been given in our lives, the only thing we're asked to take care of are these bodies, and it's the first thing that usually goes. So thanks for tuning in today. Thank you, Phil. And I know that the internet for Pete just went out. Thank you, Pete, wherever you are, trying to get back on. And join us next week. We have a special guest next week, Sandra Lee, and we will see you then. So Pete is back on just in time to say bye-bye.